Today I am doing my speech on elementary education and the history of it. Elementary education has been through an extreme evolution over the last 100 years. Discipline, curriculum, ages of students, and teacher requirements have all drastically changed, and all for the better for elementary schools today. Nowadays, children typically dread the thought of going to school and summer being over, and for them it means that they don't get to sleep in anymore, they don't get to stay up late, and they have homework. But for children 100 years ago, that was completely opposite mindset. They loved to go to school, they were excited about it, and if they didn't get to go to school, or if they were not lucky enough to go to school, they went straight into the work field, into factories, and they worked. School was considered a privilege that not many could afford, but both boys and girls were taught how to read, but boys were only taught how to write, girls were not. And so, in their minds back then, boys' education were more valued than girls. Early elementary schools in the United States didn't mainly focus on academics, such as math or reading and writing. They focused on religion and how to keep up a household for women and for men, how to work with wood or make something out of wood, just those kind of workshops that are home-based so that they can get through life and be citizens that contribute to the community as they should. Common schools were created in the 18th century. These schools educated students of all ages, and they were in one room with one teacher. And the school itself was typically a one-room schoolhouse with wooden desks, slates, chalkboards, and a teacher's desk. A slate is just a miniature chalkboard that the children can use to show their work, to show their teacher. Obviously they didn't have the same technologies that we have today, such as the, computers and boards that you use your markers on. They didn't have all of that. They just had the basic slate with chalk and some textbooks that they probably had to share with each other. Sometimes if parents were if parents couldn't afford to pay for their children's tuition, they would often in exchange do work for the teacher or just something in exchange to let their children go to school. By 1900, 31 states had compulsory school attendance for students from ages 8 to 14. After the age of 14, children were usually put out into the work field. There was no such thing as high school or anything like that unless they chose a bigger career path, such as being a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. By 1918, every state required students to complete elementary school. So rather than it being required to complete elementary school and high school, it was only elementary school. In 2001, the United States entered its current area of education accountability, and that was called the No Child Left Behind law, but now it has been switched or updated to the Every Student Succeeds Act. So now it's mandatory that high school students finish high school, or not finish high school, but attend, if they are under the age of 18. For teacher requirements, a teacher usually stayed in the position for 2 years. A few only taught longer, but usually it was in the time span of 2 years. Their pay was $25 a month, and after several years, if they were consistent, the salary was upgraded to $200 a month. In the early years, female teachers were not allowed to date or get married, or they would lose their job. Standards for female teachers changed sometime after the Reed School history, and there is, it just goes to show back how boys and girls were both taught to read, but boys learned how to write. It shows how much more men were respected versus women. Not only did the teacher educate grades 1 through 8, but they were also responsible for 30 to 35 students and maintenance duties. So custodial tasks. They had to clean the floors, wipe tables, if there was a bathroom, clean the bathroom. Just anything that involved cleaning, they had to do that. There wasn't a janitor to do it for them. During their employment, teachers were expected to save their money from their salary for their retirement, and so that they wouldn't be a burden to society and didn't become homeless. So rather than them having all the benefits that teachers have today, they didn't have anything like that. They got the salary that they got that month, and that was it. There was nothing insured for them, so they were expected to save their money. Discipline was very strict. Sure, stepping out of line in the 1800s and early 1900s could result in detention, suspension, or expulsion, but it could also result in a lashing, which is no longer in effect. What they would use for the lashing would be canes and leather straps. They would whip their hands, they would whip their legs, their arms, and even sometimes their bottoms. Sometimes in the schools they would have separate rooms, but more often than not, back in the 1800s, it was just in the classroom and everyone would view the student being punished. The whipping of the hand was the most popular. Teachers used to hit children in the hand with canes, and now they use the method of timeout and reward systems. Children were all grouped together, and no matter their age and class, but now they are split among grades with the teachers that are educated on how to teach their age. Teachers are paid more and they have better benefits. All in all, elementary education has come a long way and is constantly improving.